Chicago Bulls' new vice president, Bryson Graham, was introduced yesterday. And continuing on with some of his comments, he said the quiet parts out loud. And we're going to talk about some of those quiet parts that he said out loud. And we're also going to touch on a realistic timeline for the Chicago Bulls to get back to relevancy and in contention. But before we talk about it and break it all down, you already know you gotta hear the music first. Cognac, gang. Shy Boys podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in, love talking Bulls basketball and feeling a little bit more uppity, since we got a guy that seems like he know what he's talking about, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I want to continue the conversation surrounding Bryson Graham for a number of reasons. In today's reason, I want to talk about him saying the quiet part out loud and having an honest approach when he was questioned by Chicago Bulls media personnel. And man, I'm going to say it one more time and just plenty more times, obviously, and just reiterate how impressed I was with his introductory press conference. I think that he was a guy that was very honest about the state of the Chicago Bulls. He was a guy that was upfront about the situation. He was a guy that had the awareness to understand that he needs people around him that are very, very capable. And I was really, really impressed. And honestly, I'm leaning on the side of being excited to see what he does. Obviously, those feelings can change, but I'm going to give the guy an honest shot of changing the state of our Chicago Bulls, man. I think that we have to go out there and give him an honest shot. And I was really impressed, man. Hey, if y'all go back and listen to Arturas, he might tick you off in the introductory press conference for how he was talking. I was like, God damn. I wasn't podcasting at the time when Arturas got hired at the franchise, but man, if I was podcasting at that time, I probably would have looked at him sideways for how he wasn't really on lines with how Bryson Graham can speak well. And I think that's something that we came to realize over time, the lack of communication that was prevalent for a guy like Arturas. But this ain't about Arturas. This is about Bryson Graham and him saying the quiet parts out loud. The first thing that he said, and it's not really so quiet amongst Bulls fans, but it's been quiet around the last administration, quote unquote, that ran the Chicago Bulls operations. And that was, this is a rebuild. This is absolutely a rebuild. We're in the rebuilding stages. Yes, you have players like Montes Buzelis. Yes, you have players like Josh Giddey, who just got him some money on. But nonetheless, at the very, very least, this is a rebuild. And I'm happy that he came out, didn't beat around the bush, and absolutely acknowledged that we are at ground zero with the state of the Chicago Bulls. And I think that's very important for him and real that he absolutely said that in front of his boss. We're in rebuild. This ain't going to be something that we can turn around in 2026 going into the season. This is going to be a process that we all have to embrace. And I know that some people, they're not with the let's have patience talk, but in reality, we're going to have some type of patience. I know that when we talked about Arturas, that we didn't want to hear anything he had to say at the particular moment in time because he was past the rebuild part when he was telling us to have patience. No, mofo, we're not having patience with that. But in Bryson Graham's situation, coming in at this moment in time, this is exactly and absolutely a rebuild, man. The next thing that he said, that really said the quiet part out loud, is that no player on this team is untouchable. He could have beat around the bush. He could have endorsed certain players. He could have went out there and, you know what I'm saying, backed up some of our beliefs, because my belief is that Josh Giddey and Montes Buzelis, those are my two untouchables. But he kept it a buck right in front of everybody for the world to see, the NBA community to see, that nobody on this team is viewed untouchable at this moment in time. He took an honest approach to saying, hey, I need to see what these players are made of, and do they fit the culture that I am trying to build for the Chicago Bulls organization? And I respect it 100%. I believe Montes Buzelis is untouchable, but not in his eyes. And I hope he does the right things, and I hope that motivates guys like Montes Buzelis, Josh Giddey, so on and so forth, to where they do become quote unquote untouchable if somebody comes calling and saying, hey, we want Montes Buzelis from on our team. What will you give? And he's like, ha ha, not happening. You know what I'm saying? I hope we can get to that point in Bryson Graham's favor, to where he's looking at a guy like Montes Buzelis and he's like, no, I'm not trading this young kid. He has so much to offer for us. He's helping us win. He's helping us accomplish this, that, and the third, and so on and so forth. So I think that was very, very important that he came on and put these guys on quote unquote notice. You're not untouchable right now. So we'll see what happens with that. And I believe that Montes Buzelis, at the very least, will deem himself untouchable in time. We'll see what happens with that, though, because if Montes Buzelis is traded anytime soon, Bryson Graham, me and you might have to tussle just a little bit. I ain't going to hold you now. I got hope for Montes Buzelis. Get a kid a chance, and I believe that he absolutely will. The last thing that I want to touch on that Bryson Graham said, and I believe it was the quiet part out loud. It's going to be a collaborative effort. And what made me take a breath and really get excited and scream, let's go, was when he stood at the podium and said, if I'm the smartest man in the room, I failed. Huh? What? Because the last person that was here believed he was the smartest person in the room. And you can tell by how snarky he was toward Chicago media when the results said you were trash. And Arturs would still stand on that square and still not acknowledge that he failed, and still not make statements that'll make you believe that he's understanding that he's crapping his pants right now and he think it's raining. So I give a lot of credit to Bryson Graham, man. I gotta give a lot of credit to him and really shout him out and say, hey, that right there, bro, is a good way to let people know you're open. You're an open-minded guy. He even talked about things that, hey, we may disagree on things, and that's fine. And then he also took ownership and said that, hey, at the end of the day, it's going to be my decisions, and I'm going to live with them, even if it gets me killed. What? You're admitting that if you screw up, you're ready for criticism and you're not going to run away from it like somebody I know? Shout out to Bryson Graham. I'm not even going to lie to you. So he said those quiet parts out loud. He really stood on business, and I respect it. Now it's time to put some actions behind the words. Let's not get it misconstrued, ladies and gentlemen. I love the first impression. I love the introductory press conference. But don't get it fucked up. Don't get it fucked up. We need action. All my Chicago people, what they say? He ain't about that life. He ain't about that action. So Bryson Graham, we need to see some action. Yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about right now, my Chicago people. Yeah, we love what he said. But now it comes with, what are the actions going to tell us? Are the actions going to tell us that, hey, you don't know what the hell you're doing when it comes to drafting, when it comes to developing, when it comes to contract negotiation and personnel in within the front office decisions? We still need to see those things, ladies and gentlemen. So while I'm happy for Bryson Graham and how he was speaking, we move on to phase 2, and that's the action. And on Mother's Day, Sunday, we find out where we will land with that first pick in the first round. I told y'all I spent it once and we got top 4. I ain't spending it no more. We gonna see what happens. We gonna see what happens. Hey, fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen. Fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen. But nonetheless, it's time to move on. Now, with Bryson Graham entering the Chicago Bulls building and him admitting that we're at ground zero, I want to talk about what's a realistic timeline for change. Now, the Chicago Bulls definitely are in a good position to turn things around. Let's talk about having $60+ million in cap space, a ton of second round picks. Did you laugh? Bryson Graham did. And then you still have Matas Buzelis, Josh Giddey as 2 good players to start this thing off with. And that's not even mentioning some of the young talent that showed a little bit of something that you can work with this season in Leonard Miller and Rob Dillingham. And that's not even considering some of the vets that you have on a team in Zach Collins and Jalen Smith. So you still have some bones to work with to build up this body. How well can you build this thing up? It's going to take some time, if we're being honest. I think that if you're considering everything, this is probably a 2 to 3 year process before we see playoff contention. In my opinion, you do have the available cap space to go out there and potentially snag one of the young bigs that are going to be restricted free agents. We're talking about your Mark Williams. We're talking about your Walker Kesslers and your Jalen Durans. That's what we're talking about. So you're going to have some flexibility in this situation if you're Bryson Graham. But I'm still going to stamp it and say, but I'm not even talking about championship contention. I just want us to be a team that's bringing in talent, which we all talked about and which we all agree with, that we have to flood this team with talent to evaluate them, to see if they can play well with each other, and to build chemistry and build that culture. So let's flood it with talent. They're going to have a lot of flexibility. We have 4 picks in this draft. 2 second-round picks, 2 first-round picks. Then you have the money aspect that we just talked about. Do you go out there and snag a veteran for veteran leadership? Do you go out there and try to snag one of these young restricted free agent centers? How do you build out and paint this canvas to where the Chicago Bulls can turn this thing around? You know, it's not going to be something that the Chicago Bulls are going to do in 2026 per se. But when you hit 2027, what will we be able to check off after this 2026 season that we're trending in the right direction? That's something that we're going to have to sit there and wait to evaluate. But it's definitely something that we're going to be able to look at the end of the season and say, hey, did we bring in more talent? Check. Is X players that enter the team going to be here and develop for the foreseeable future? Check. How has Matas Buzelis grown? Has Matas Buzelis regressed? Has Matas Buzelis taken a step forward to where he's knocking on the door of All-Star? Check or not check. So it's going to be some steps that we're going to have to take. And the same thing that AK said when he entered into the building, said that we're not going to skip steps. Do Bryson Graham pivot off of what he said and that he's not going to skip steps? Because AK skipped steps. He absolutely skipped steps. And is Bryson Graham going to stay the course? Is he going to stay on that path to bringing the Chicago Bulls back to relevancy? And that's very, very important to all of us. We don't want one good year or 35 games of being a first seed. We want continued, sustained success of being in the talks for playoff contention, championship contention, and finals appearance contenders. That's what we want. We see my guy Steve-O up here all the time pissed off because of the state of the Chicago Bulls. And it's a couple of you all who support us that feel the same way. So what will we see? What will we see? And realistically, that timeline for just playoff contention is just 2 to 3 seasons away. It could happen faster. It absolutely could. But that's what I'm going to stamp it. 2 to 3 seasons before the Chicago Bulls have some serious playoff contention narratives surrounding this team. And I think they have everything available to them at this moment to ensure it happens. But it comes down to how do you make it happen at the end of the day. But hey, that's it for me, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of Shy Bulls Podcast. Before you get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, man. We have your off-season coverage coming all summer long. We in the spring right now. It's been raining like a mug. But nonetheless, the content will continue. Me and C-Dub are going to start going into this draft once we find out our position, and we're going to be able to turn up. It hopefully turn up. Hey, make sure y'all stay locked in, man. I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all always see red, and y'all already know I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace. Cognac.